Welcome to the Fishing for a Reason podcast. My name is Jamie,
I'm Scott.
and we're with Anglers Unlimited, where we help people catch more fish and have more fun. So, we do that in a variety of different ways with in person classes, we teach seminars, as well as have an online membership where we host all of our courses that will help you from start to finish with everything from bait to plate to tying knots. Learn anything you want about these fisheries. If that is something that you're interested in learning more about, you can go to anglersunlimited.co/membership to get more information. It's a super fun community of awesome fishermen. So check that out. But what we're going to talk about today on today's podcast is one of my favorite fisheries. I think I say that actually with every fishery because they're all freaking fun and they're all fun in their own unique way. But we're going to talk about how you can get your limits of shrimp next time that you go out shrimping. So, what do you love about shrimping, Scott?
It's fun to go out and get them. They're really tasty, maybe close to one of my favorites as well. And we've got probably, arguably, the best shrimping in Puget Sound right in our backyard. Yeah, that's what I love about it.
Absolutely. And it's what?
No, I was going to say easy, but I will say easy, but then I will say also can be hard. So I'm not going to say easy. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it can be challenging, but if it's a great day, most of the time it can be pretty easy to get them.
When you say challenging, do you mean challenging to get the limits or do you mean challenging to manage the gear?
In most cases, it's gear, weather, tides, which we'll dive into, but it can be, you can find yourself in some crazy situations if you're not careful.
So be careful always. But yeah, shrimping is a blast. I really enjoy taking people out that have never experienced it before because it's a fast fishery, especially if you know what you're doing and you know where to set your pots and you set yourself up for success before you ever leave the dock. You're going to get your limit. And we have a secret weapon that we're going to talk about today. Some of you may be aware of it, but we call it the coffin pot. And those pots, they just fish. And we always have a ton of, we're always throwing back shrimp by the time that we're done fishing. So it's really cool to bring out people on the boat and have them get to experience literally pulling their dinner out of the water. It's something like when you fish all the time, which I'm sure many of the listeners can relate. You fish all the time. It's so easy to take for granted what we get to go do on the weekends or in an afternoon. But just to go out on the water and pull your dinner out of the sea and have the freshest catch that you literally could ever catch is incredible. There's nothing like it. And so it's a really cool way to introduce people to a quicker fishery where you're not out there for hours and hours on end. You're just doing a quick 45-minute to an hour soak. You've got your limit. You get to rip their heads off. The kids think it's either really fun or really gross. It's a super good time. So, yeah, we're going to talk about all the things that you need to know to get started shrimping if you've never done it and some of the tips that we have used to accelerate our success as well. So, where would you like to start today, Scott?
Probably the gear.
Let's talk about gear.
All right. You got to have a way to catch the shrimp. So that's a pot. The state does have limits on what you can do. They've got to have certain size mesh for spot prawns. There's a limit on the amount of ground surface that you can take up with your pot. And we're going to show you the coffin pot, which has exactly 10 linear feet of ground space. And that's the max allowable that you can have. And then you got to have a way to attach your buoy and your line to the pot. And then you got to have some buoys, and state requires yellow for shrimp pots. And then you got to have a way to get the shrimp pot out of the water. And we'll talk about that. And so, are we going to pop up the picture of the coffin pot? There's many different types of pots, and we've gone through various kinds. There's the Ladner round ones, there's the square ones, there's a square 12-inch, there's square 18-inch, there's square rectangle ones, there's small 2-foot square, there's 3-foot square, and then there's the coffin pot. So we got introduced to this about 4 years ago, and ever since then, that's basically all we've been using. And you can see it is a approximately, like I said, 10 feet linear floor surface. It's got 6 ramps, two on each side, one on each end. It's got a harness kind of offset. It's got two bait holding wells. And then it's got fast fish ramps that allow the fish to get in to the trap. Bungee corded door on, I believe most of them have it on both ends, so it makes it easy to pour the shrimp out into your basket. And I don't know, we typically would take, you can have up to 4 traps on your, or shrimp pots on your boat. You can have 2 per person. We typically will only, if it's just us, we typically will only use one of these because we've just been getting the limits. And
Limits.
if we had 2 of those pots, we'd just be throwing so many shrimp back into the water, and it probably, the survival rate of them would be probably diminished. So the coffin pot is what we're using and what I recommend if anybody's getting into it.
Other
Also
thing
on
I
the
want to,
coffin pot that
yeah,
you want to
because
talk about.
because for me, like I'm vertically challenged, so 5 1 3/8. But that being said, when I was using the Ladners, and for those of you that don't know, those are the ones that are a circle and they have the mesh. So circle mesh ones, those are the Ladners, and we had those prior, and they're great. They still fish really well and they stack really nicely, but they're freaking heavy. And of course, the you want weight in your pots. But what's really cool about these coffin pots is I can grab the side of them. And actually, I have a YouTube video that kind of shows what this looks like. And I'll make sure to link it in the show notes for anyone that's interested in checking out these pots. But yeah, I can carry them very easily down the ramp because we add our weight to the pot after the fact, where the Ladners are already pre weighted. And they just fish. They fish. Gear that works is great. And they sit really nice inside the boat because you can just sit them on their end and you can bungee them if you want to, but they're pretty convenient as well as they just fish amazing. So,
Yeah. They're a lot easier to store, I think, than the Ladners, the big round ones. But hey, use whatever you got. And if you're looking for a recommendation or new pots, though, I think the coffin pots are the way to go.
those that want to get them, where can they find them?
At ESI, Essential Shipyard Industries, we have those in stock now there, and you can get everything you need to go shrimping.
I think Sportco also
Yeah.
has them.
You can find them. Most of your big sporting goods stores are going to have all the shrimp gear this time of year. So if you live
Yep.
close though to Anacortes or to Skyline, come on down to ESI. You mentioned weight, so the weight is important. So whatever pot you decide to use, you got to have it weighted down. You're going to be the current and the wind is going to try to drag your pot and move it, and you don't want your pot bouncing around so much. So I will put a 10-pound weight in the pot itself. And a lot of people say that's too light. But I also, when we first got introduced to these, the person that showed us how to use them, basically, we will snap a 12 to 15-pound cannonball on the line itself, about 6 to 7 feet up, and that kind of acts as an anchor. And I've been doing that now for I think 4 years, and I've never had an issue with the pot or the weight of the pot. If you think you're going to be encountering some current, you may want to go a little heavier. A lot of people say 35 pounds total on the whole setup. And if you think about it, that's a lot. 5/16 leaded line from the pot to the first set of buoys. Most of these come with a pre-rigged harness on them. You can also buy harnesses that have 4-point attachment to put them on. If you have a different kind of pod, it probably has a harness built in. And then I was just doing the big heavy duty snaps, which I think we're going to see the picture here. And then from there, I've also started using C-links. It's a quick and easy way to connect either to the harness, to the line, from the line to the buoys, and then from your buoy setup, whatever you go with. They have a design that is built to easily disconnect, and then depending on how you're storing your line, it will make it just quick and seamless, really. We've graduated to the SMI reels with line on it. We can hold 400 feet of leaded line, and I recommend probably having at least 400 feet wherever you're fishing. We're typically fishing about 325 feet. That's the length of line that we use. If you're only fishing in 200 feet, you might be able to get away with 325, but most of the things you buy are going to be 400 or 600 feet in length anyway. And again, we're only fishing 2 pots, so we don't have to buy 4. The buoys we're using, you can do several things. The typical setup is one or two yellow standard size buoys, and then that kind of breaks the water going to your big, like A2 or A3 big yellow buoy. And a lot of people put something on their shrimp pots to uniquely identify them. I think I have a green star or something on mine so I can see them from a long ways away or easier to identify because a lot of the spots that you go shrimping, you will not be the only person in the area in most cases. So you want to be able to uniquely identify. And as all other buoys, you need to have your name and number and address clearly written on them.
You mentioned your rope line storage, and I know we used to do the bucket. We just had I don't know how many gallons, one of those big tubs. And I would be the coiler while it's coming up and just make sure the line didn't get all coiled or messed up, which was fine. It totally worked. But you recently switched the way that you manage line, and it's been a game changer for our program. So can you dive into what that looks like and what that product is? I know you mentioned it a little bit here, but I think it's an important thing to highlight.
Yeah, I think SMI and Bomac, and I don't know if there's another manufacturer, but we used to have everybody would have a garden hose storage reel on their boat. You'd wrap your rope around that, and you could hold two, kind of big and cumbersome. SMI and Bomac now make a rope winder system. It basically mounts onto your boat, either a Scotty mount. I think they might have Canon mounts as well. And then it basically you can put 400 feet onto one of these reels, or they have a bigger one that'll hold 600 feet, or maybe two, actually 800 feet. So if you want to show if you got a picture of it,
I do.
it's
I
a
grabbed
pretty handy
an
system, and
Amazon
just
link.
makes it easy to store and move and control your shrimp rope, especially when you're going to put it down. There you go. There's Amazon SMI rope winder. You can get a 4 or 800, and
Yep.
this is the Scotty mount, and it just makes it pretty easy to store and manage your rope on the boat.
Yep. So
So
basically, as the pot is coming up, one person is just coiling. So for those of you that are listening to this and not seeing my screen, it basically just looks like a spool with a handle. And it's really simple to use. And I found very effective, both for deploying the pots and retrieving the pots. So yeah, it's definitely an upgrade that we had thought about for a while. And our friends actually were the ones that introduced us to this. And we jumped on board when we saw how efficient it made their program. So, highly recommend checking one of those out. And then also, if you want to, I've got the diagram here of how we set up our pots. Just
yeah.
be aware that this is not to scale. And there is a link in the show notes for those of you that just want access to this. So you can reference it when you're getting yourself geared up. Just click the link in the show notes or go to anglersunlimited.co/shrimp and you can download the diagram.
So yeah, there you go. There's your shrimp pot with your harness hooked up to your line, 10 to 15 pound downrigger ball on the line, somewhere between 5 and 10 feet, yellow buoys. And then do you have a picture of the sea link that you want to show?
I think I do.
The sea links that go in between everything that makes it nice to, there you go. So you see the top center is the sea links, and they come in different sizes, and you basically tie them on to each part of your system. And the downrigger ball with your big clip there, you can see that kind of like a long line clip. They're really sturdy, and knock on wood, have never lost one of these with these clips on it. They will stay.
Yeah.
Um,
And you can see the picture over here on the right. It's basically where how we used to store our line, but you'll just tie a little knot, like a little loop 10 feet, about 10 to 15 feet away from the pot. And that's where you're going to clip that downrigger ball onto. And it'll
yeah.
come through the pot puller just fine with the loop in there. You do have to remove the downrigger ball once it gets up to the top, but the loop will go
Yeah.
through the spool just fine.
Yeah. And then that's pretty much the setup right there. A1 or 2 buoy up there. Again, just something that you can see. That's what the basic setup of what you need. So moving on, how are you going to get it up out of the water now? Pot pullers. There's all kinds of different kinds. There's Scotty, there's the Brutus, there's the Discovery Bay, there's the McKay shrimp, mighty haulers. all good options other than or rather than pulling by hand. You can pull them by hand, but it's going to be a lot of effort. And I actually, the Scotty pop puller on the left, I've used that for a lot of years, and we essentially have worn one out. So we've upgraded to a Discovery Bay hauler now, which has got the davit arm that swings out over with the motor. It works great. It's very powerful, and it does a good job
Oh,
pulling the pots.
don't think we have a
Um,
picture of it, unfortunately, but we'll make sure to splice one of those in there. So, what would you say is your pros and cons of the Scotty versus the Discovery Bay?
I think the Scotty doesn't have the power. You got to keep a lot of pressure on the capstan that the rope's going around. So it's pretty, you have to pay a lot of attention to it, and it doesn't have the power that the other pot pullers do. The Discovery Bay and the ones with the davit and the Mighty Hauler, you can stand back and reel the line onto your SMI rope winder without paying too much attention to the hauler, and they got a lot of power because the pots are heavy and you're going to have, like I said, you want about 30, get up to around 30 pounds of weight overall. And then with the shrimp and the bait and everything else in it, it's a heavy pot coming up. That's all I got on pot pullers. Any
How about,
questions?
yeah, actually, when you mounted it, because I remember when we decided to make the investment and make the switch. And like we said, if you're looking to start out more on a budget, just get the Scotty because it's going to mount to your downrigger mount already and it performs just fine until you know that you really want to invest in this fishery. And then once you upgrade, you've also got to think about mounting. So I'd love if you shared a little bit of your experience mounting and any recommendations you would give for somebody who's ready to invest and just wants to know what they should expect from the next step.
Yeah, mounting, it wasn't too bad. Every boat is going to be different. If you can go down through the gunnel and mount it flush with your gunnel, that's probably a great option. I had to do it on the side of the gunnel because the boat is angled, and so you couldn't really get through the gunnel and then a straight shot down to the floor of the boat where you're going to get most of your strength from. So you just have to look at the layout of your boat and where you think you're going to be driving from, and where do you think you want the pots to come in at, and how you want the flow of your shrimping experience to go every time you pull a pot up. And then if you're using the rope winder, it's got to be on the other side of the boat. So you want it directly across from where your pot puller is. And yeah, so you just have to look at it and work through that whole process. And then how are you going to power it? Where's the power plug going to be? They each have to have I think it's a 60 amp resettable circuit breaker, and you can get self-resetting circuit breakers. And again, McKay Shrimp Gear, Shrimp and Crab Gear, they have pop pullers with all the gear that you need to install it. It's just something you have to think about and go through.
Yep. And you can also hire it out if it's not something you want to mess with, but it is totally possible to do it yourself. Scott did it himself. And I'm not going to lie, watching the whole evolution, I was just like, I don't know how to help, but moral support. But it was really great once we got that thing going. It was a real game changer. Like shrimping with the Scotty was great, but you can get a little tired when you're guiding that rope up and using that right amount of pressure. It can be a little bit funny on the angles of your back. But when you put the new pot puller on and we just turn that thing on and holy moly, it just magically comes up without any effort at all. It was awesome. I'm not going to lie. And I think I might have a video. I was going to check really quick here if I can grab a shrimping video to show with the new pot puller. So for those of you that are tuning in to the audio, there will be a video on YouTube where we cut to this as well. But I'm going to just show you quickly. We actually went shrimping with my dad. So here is a quick video of everything. My dad's doing the coil. So we had it set up over there on the Scotty mount. I think this was his first time shrimping actually. And so you can just see Scott's monitoring the pot puller. And it's mainly you just got to keep up with it because the pot puller is pretty quick. And the other goal is to make sure that when you wind the little spool that you keep the rope going flat. I don't know how to say that clearer. You don't want it to bunch up on one side of the spool, if that makes sense. Anything to add with that?
Yeah, it's not a level wind reel.
Yeah.
So you have to just keep leveling as you go.
Yep. Should we talk about bait?
Yeah, let's talk about bait.
Okay, great. I've got a slide up here. I'll show you guys. So I'll go over this and then Scott chime in if I miss anything. But the biggest thing is get your bait ready before you leave the dock. I would say there's been a few times where we would go out and we are maybe in a little bit of a rush and just the motion of the ocean, very slight even. And when your head is in the bait bucket, if you have anybody who potentially could get queasy on the boat, and sometimes that is me, it will definitely trigger that. So I would recommend get your bait ready at the dock before you leave. But we use the bait pellets that you can buy, and we'll just have a 5 gallon bucket and put some of those pellets in there, add some Procure crab and shrimp attractant oil just to get it nice and oily, and then 3 cans of Friskies cat food. And you do want to use the fish based flavors. We learned a little bit about those recently and what kind of amino acids that are in the cat food. As long as it's the fish based ones, the amino acids are what actually draws in the fish. So make sure you check that out. And then we use chub mackerel. So we'll put a can of that, 3 Friskies. And then I don't know, how many scoopfuls of the pellets do you say? Like 4?
Probably, yeah, probably 2, 3 cups or so, depending on how much you're making. You just want enough pellets to really fill because all the other
The
stuff is
bait
going to kind of
containers.
wash out. So the bait you
Yeah.
need, if you got 4 bait containers, that's probably four cups of 3 cups
You
of
can,
pellets and
You
all the
can
other
use your
stuff.
bait container as your measuring device. So scoop it up and it'll be 3/4 of the thing full. So you'll want 4 of those at least. I probably would do at least 1 or 2 extra on the boat. We usually don't need any extra because we limit out pretty quickly. But if you aren't sure or you're newer to shrimping and you may need to reset, throw a like 1 extra scoopful just so you have that extra buffer. And then you definitely want to use rubber gloves because the oil and everything will just stick to everything in your hands and you'll be smelling it and tasting it in your sandwich. And that's not fun for anybody. And then a long handled metal spoon is great for mixing and also great for filling your bait container. So it's really a simple mix. And what's great is once you've mixed it up, if you over mixed a batch or you limit it out in a pot and you didn't really need to soak a second time, you can just store this by popping the lid on top of get one of those 5 gallon buckets with the lid, put the lid on top, and you can just store it in a nice, cool, dry area and you can go out shrimping with it again.
You can usually, yeah, save your bait for if we have 2, 3 weeks. It starts to smell really good after about week 2. You're gonna, yeah, just any of the attractants. Most of it's you can use just cat food also if you want, if you don't want to buy the pellets. Again, any kind of Friskies, seafood, white fish combo is going to work well for the bait.
And then when you catch these guys, it's always great to have stuff on board. So what we do is we'll have Ziploc bags on board, or you can just get those large Tupperwares. And as soon as they come over the edge, you want to start counting your shrimp. So it's 80 per person, and just be aware that they need to be separated. So you can't just, if you have 4 people, you can't put 240 shrimp in one container. They need to be in separate containers for every limit that you are keeping on board. And so we just use Ziploc bags. It makes it really fast and easy, or these little tubs that you see here. So we'll separate out our shrimp once they're on board, count them, and then anything that is over the limit will go right back in the water as quickly as possible. So it's nice to have multiple people doing it at a time. What seems to work really well for us is we'll have the bucket that we dump them into. And so there's a bucket full of prawns that are all squiggly. And then we'll have a container where each individual container, Scott's been using these little tiny white buckets. I don't know what size they are. I
I
don't think
think
I
they're
have a picture.
gallon. Ace Hardware, and it actually is. I would. It's exactly 80 every time. Exactly.
Yeah, it's great. So you can get pretty dang close when
You
you
can get
fill up
real
those
close.
those little gallon buckets, and then
They're
you
paint buckets.
process
Yeah.
them later. So we'll just count them first and then we'll do the head ripping later. But it works really fast and efficient. What we'll do if we do soak for a second hour for got more people on the boat or whatever, we'll drop the pots right back in. And once we've counted everything and separated everything, then we'll just process by ripping their heads off. We just do a quick twist and toss the head in the water and keep the tails. So a lot of people also like to keep the whole prawn because you can barbecue them, grill them up. You can also do a lot of what's the thing you do with the heads? There's a soup or something that's really popular.
You can make seafood stock with the heads. You can, I hear chickens like them. You can do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
A consomme. So where are you going to go? This map behind me actually is a good reference. If you see these steep rocky edges of this is Eastern Bank, and actually I move my shoulder down here. The southeast corner of Eastern Bank is great shrimping. It's rocky, it's steep, and you can get on some of these flat spots and shrimp. I'm typically I'm targeting anywhere from I've got places where I shrimp 200 feet, and then most of the time though I'd probably start at 300 feet is my go-to 3 to 325, and we will show you a spot. I'm looking at here's Garmin maps. And if you look at the San Juan Islands, you've got tons of places to shrimp. Typically we live in Burroughs Bay. We used to be able to shrimp right here in Biz Point. It's again, if you zoom in and look at it closely, it's a nice steep rocky area. Goes off into deep water. It's about 250 here. It says mud, but the cliffs right here and the rocks is where all the shrimp are really going to be concentrated. You'll see people shrimping out here. That's a great spot. Area 6, we used to be able to go down to Area 6, which is right, let's see, where does it begin? It goes from Smith Island to a sign right here on the rocks. So part of Lawson Reef right here is in Area 6, and you used to be able to go down there and shrimp, and you could keep 200. I think it's all 80 now. But again, you're looking for rocky, steep areas, and then we would pretty much put our pots kind of at the edge of the steep area. So these flat areas like this, as you see these contour lines, it's the closer they are, the steeper it is. All around the San Juan Islands, up north by Spiden, up here, up north side of Orcas Island, over by Waldron, there's tons of areas. You'll see people out at Eastern Bank, which I showed you on the wall map behind me, but down here in the southeast corner, there's spots. But the best place, and there will be probably 200 to 300 boats out here on opening day, May 21, is Iceberg Point. And this whole area, you can shrimp anywhere from, you see MacArthur Bank right here where I'm moving my cursor, from MacArthur Bank all the way over to Colville Island, and then all the way out. This whole area is just filled with shrimp. Typically, I'll go down here and I'll look for about 325 feet. I'll put a couple of pots, maybe one at 350, one at 320, and see which one's producing better. I used to have a spot down here by Colville, though, that was only 200 feet and there would be nobody around. So I would go find that. And if you look again, you zoom in, you see these steep, rocky areas. There's just shrimp everywhere out here. That's what we're looking for. And honestly, this is probably where I'm going to go 90% of the time anymore because it's just easier and the shrimping has been pretty good. Find you a nice rocky place. There's tons of places around. Try new places. If you don't live here and you live or you don't live close to here, out on the banks can be good. And when I say out on the banks, Eastern, Hine, I think I've seen people fishing in Coyote, shrimping out there. All those places are going to hold shrimp down on the rocky, deep parts. So that's kind of where to go. Actually, and if you're up by Lopez, people are shrimping up here by Lopez, Fisherman's Bay. So you can get shrimp in there. And sometimes we'll go out to Parks Bay, which is right here on Shaw. And you can shrimp along here, over by Point Caution. There's places. So there's just a ton of shrimp. So I guess the cool thing would be to find your closest spot and get good at it and
Hmm.
practice. When to go is the next question that people always ask. And The tides are going to be your biggest factor. So we're going to go ahead and we'll bring up May 21 on deep zoom, and we'll look at May 21, opening day. If you look at iceberg, the current there that day, it is looks like a pretty decent day all day. So sunrise is at 5:33. It's a minus zero point 0.8. It gets slows down to zero point 0.2, and then so really I feel like you could almost shrimp iceberg all day. As you get closer to Colville, it picks up. It's a 1.9 initially at sunrise, and it doesn't get to 1 knot until 9 a.m. And I will tell you, I have lost shrimp pots. The the key is to not be shrimping when it's more than 1 knot. I have told myself that countless times, and then I have gone out there, and next thing the current is off, or it's just faster than what it was supposed to be, or I probably just dropped thinking, oh, it's going to be fine. It's such a beautiful day. And then you come back and your pot's 5 miles east of where you dropped it. So 1 knot is, I won't even think about it anymore unless it's 1 knot. If there's any wind, that is also going to make it more difficult. So wind is going to blow your buoy and your pot if you drop it and there's a pretty good wind or wind gust. And once your pot gets off the bottom, with a wind blowing it, it will continue to get blown. We've seen crab pots that weigh probably 65, 70 pounds being blown and drifting right by us, halibut fishing in 180 feet of water. Don't think that it can't happen. So anytime there's any kind of like abnormality in the weather or the currents, I would just save your $500 and do not drop your shrimp pots, because that's essentially what it's going to cost you to replace it. So 1 knot, no wind, good weather, and then go shrimping. And also, if it looks like, let's see what 22, see 22 looks at Colville, it's really ripping 2.5 knots in the morning. So I would stay away from the closer you get to Colville Island right here, the more it's like a nozzle going through there. So it really rips through there and could be difficult shrimping. Also, dropping in shipping lanes is probably a bad idea. The boats that are in those lanes are not going to move because there's a yellow buoy, or they may not even see it. Be careful in those shipping lanes as well. And then Colville gets to 1 knot at 9:45. So as the water slows down, it's probably a little safer. And then not much current activity from 1 to what is that, 5 o'clock, it looks like. So there's a good 7 hours, 8 hours of shrimping tides there around Colville. And then if you look at iceberg that same day, pretty slacky over by iceberg. And you wouldn't think that just that little bit of distance right there would matter too much, but it does, just based on how the water's coming down around Lopez Island. And I think that's all I have about tides and current tides and weather. Just be careful, and yeah, love your gear like you don't want to lose it.
Love your gear. Yeah. And also, when you are setting your pots, it doesn't hurt to get to your spot and see what the drift is and just be cognizant of when you actually put the pot in the water. It's going to take some time before it hits the bottom. So you don't want to miss essentially and end up setting too deep and losing your pots.
Or close to another pot. You have to,
Yes.
so it's going to take 3 minutes or so for your pot to get down to the bottom and then you to get all the line out. So by the time you stop, you're drifting. Say this current is, even though it's maybe a half a knot, it's pushing you west. So you don't want to drop directly east of a buoy or a pot, and you have to think about which way the buoy is actually swinging on the shrimp pot that you're dropping next to, because they've got 400 feet of line out as well. Just take care of where you're dropping, and try to leave your neighbors enough space to get to their buoy and pull it up without being wrapped around them.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a really great fishery. And then once you've got your shrimp, I personally think the best way to cook them is keep it simple and use seawater. So if you're going to boil, do like a shrimp boil with, you could do potatoes, you can add corn. But what we really like to do is boil it in seawater. It tastes better than if you just use regular tap water. It'll hold the salt in it, but do not grab water from the marina. So what we'll do is when we're out, we're done shrimping, we'll just take a bucket that's clean and dump or scoop out some water so we have some good fresh water that we can use, and we'll actually boil it in that water. It's delicious. So I want to say we only do it for 8 minutes. How long do we do it usually?
Yeah, I think I would not cook them much more than 5 minutes. They
Okay, let
don't
me
take long to
see.
cook. And then if you're sauteing them, the same thing, less is better. Yeah.
Oh wow. Boil spot prawns for 1 to 2 minutes. That's it.
Yeah. I,
Yeah. Okay,
and
so
it,
when you're boiling your spot prawns, again in the seawater, what we'll do is we'll bring the water to the boil and then add the prawns to the boil, which is going to cool the water down. It'll lose that boil, but once it gets back up to temperature, only 1 to 2 minutes at a boil, and you're done. And you'll actually see the color change. They'll go from that pretty red orange to a more pink, and the shrimp tail will curl a little bit. So your goal is just to not overcook them because they'll get a little bit chewy. And just before they're done is almost perfect because they'll keep cooking after the fact. So a shrimp boil is just so much fun. Invite your friends over and you can tell a story about your day while you're eating a delicious fresh caught meal. What's your favorite way to eat them, Scott?
ceviche. I love ceviche with the shrimp.
How do
Really
you do it?
tasty. There's tons of good recipes out there, but just some good citrus. So you need lemon juice, lime. You can use grapefruit juice. Chop that up and get it marinating for 15, 20 minutes in the fridge. And then adding some avocado, some onion, some garlic, little teaspoon of sugar maybe in it. Sweetens it up a little bit as well. But these things are so sweet that it probably doesn't even need that.
Oh my
And
God.
then jalapenos. Yeah,
My
it's
mouth is
really
like
good.
watering just thinking about
Yeah,
it.
me too. Me too.
So awesome. Get out there and go shrimping. And again, if you guys are not part of our Facebook group, we do have a free Facebook community where we post the videos of these podcasts. If you go to Facebook and search Anglers Unlimited San Juan Islands, you'll find our Facebook group. Hop in there and share your pictures. So we want to see your fresh catch or your favorite recipe. And I hope you guys get out there and have a great time and limit out quick. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, that's it. Have fun.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful day.